Good evening, everyone. Today we're diving deeper into the realm of real life horror. We'll be sharing more chilling tales based on true events. Before we begin, for our appreciation and encouragement our hard work, please hit that like button and subscribe to support our channel. We're always on the lookout for new, terrifying stories. If you have a bone chilling experience to share, please reach out. Your story might be featured in a future episode. I've been a trucker for nearly 15 years. In 2017, I was driving a late night haul through the pitch black Mojave Desert in California. My destination was Arizona, likely to deliver appliances, though the details are hazy. My truck's dim headlights, a problem I'd been neglecting, were particularly noticeable on this empty road. I strained my eyes to make out the road ahead, debating a rest until sunrise. However, desperate for the money, I pressed on, trusting the straight path. About an hour before dawn, I slammed on the brakes, seeing a car with its hazards flashing in the middle of the road, its passenger door wide open. I managed to stop just inches from the car. Despite my fearlessness, curiosity outweighed fear. I reversed my truck, got out, and approached the car, wondering if someone needed help. It was a warm, still night. I remember thinking how odd it was that there was barely any wind. The silence was profound, broken only by the faint clicking of my hazard lights. It felt like the entire desert was holding its breath. Cautiously, I approached the car. It was a new looking red Ford Fusion with its passenger door wide open. As I circled the vehicle, a chill ran down my spine. The car was completely empty. I double checked the back seat and under any possible hiding spots, but there was no sign of anyone. My initial expectation was to find someone in need of help, perhaps a weary traveler who dozed off in an unwise location, but this was different. The car was vacant, and the atmosphere was unnerving. I glanced over my shoulder, a growing sense of unease washing over me. The darkness was thick, and I couldn't see far beyond the glow of my truck's headlights. A part of me wanted to retreat, to forget the entire encounter. Yet, curiosity and a strange sense of duty compelled me to investigate further. I peered inside the car, everything seemed normal. The key was even in the ignition. Next, I turned my attention to the trunk. With the key in hand, I unlocked it, but the trunk remained stubbornly shut, jammed from the inside. A shiver ran down my spine. What could be hidden within? I managed to slip open the back door and squeezed into the cramped back seat. To my astonishment, the trunk popped open, revealing three suspicious garbage bags and a rope securing the lid. I glanced over my shoulder, confirming I was alone. As I reached for the bags, a deafening gunshot shattered the night's silence. My head slammed against the roof in shock. Adrenaline surging, I tossed the keys on the front seat and bolted from the car. As I scrambled into my semi-truck, a gruff voice barked out in the distance, growing louder with each repetition. I fumbled with the ignition, cursing as the engine sputtered. Through the rearview mirror, I saw a short, burly man with red hair and overalls. In one hand, he clutched a shovel, in the other, an old hunting rifle. Our eyes met for a tense moment before I pulled away. His expression wasn't crazed, but rather filled with a strange urgency. He dropped the shovel and waved frantically, shouting, "Wait, but I couldn't risk it." I sped away, watching in the rear view as he chased my truck a short distance before returning to his car. It was clear he wanted me to stop, but fear had taken hold and I couldn't turn back. I accidentally hit a speed bump, sending my car accelerating much faster than intended. I drove for a few minutes, thinking I was out of danger, but then I saw headlights rapidly approaching from behind. I've never felt such fear. I called the police, explaining the situation as best I could. The car was right on my tail, honking incessantly. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. so I kept driving, praying the driver wouldn't ram me. After a tense 15 minutes, the car cut in front of me and slammed on the brakes, forcing me to slow down. I was inches from a collision when police lights appeared ahead. The other car swerved off the road and disappeared into the desert. I pulled over and waited for the officer to arrive. I frantically recounted the incident, but the officer, instead of pursuing the other driver, insisted on taking a report. I pleaded with him to chase the man, but he dismissed my concerns, promising a thorough search once backup arrived. They never called with an update. I've told this story countless times, and it's always met with disbelief. People speculate that the driver was involved in something sinister, perhaps burying bodies. However, the small shovel and the size of the bags in his trunk don't seem to fit that theory. Some friends suggest dismemberment, but I prefer a less gruesome explanation like burying a sick animal or disposing of dangerous snakes. Regardless of the truth, this experience has made me wary of late night desert drives. I'm Kevin, a trucker with 15 years of experience. It's a routine job: pick up goods, verify them, and deliver them on time. Efficiency is key, especially for someone like me who's been doing this for so long. I pride myself on my work ethic, often pushing myself to the limit. 4 years ago, I worked for a North Dakota warehouse. The flat terrain made trucking easier, but it also meant that missed sleep could cost me my job. One Tuesday in May, I decided to push myself to the extreme. I planned a long haul to Montana, aiming to complete the trip without stopping to sleep. As the night wore on, fatigue set in, but I persevered, determined to finish the job. My friend Tristan, a fellow trucker, introduced me to smelling salts when I first started driving. If you're unfamiliar, they're basically crystals in a small bottle. One sniff, and you're wide awake. But be careful, too much use can be dangerous, or so Tristan warned me. They burn your nose a bit, but they were my go-to for a quick energy boost. This time I took a big whiff and jerked my head back. The adrenaline rush was immediate, and I hoped it would last the rest of the drive. Half an hour later, I was struggling to stay awake. I felt myself drifting off, and the truck veered towards the shoulder, jolting me awake. This was getting dangerous. I needed to pull over, but there was nowhere, just woods on either side of the highway. I slowed down, desperately searching for an exit. In the dim light, I saw something strange: a purple dress lying in the middle of the road. Was I hallucinating? I blinked repeatedly to clear my vision. No, it was real. I drove past the dress, puzzled but too tired to think much of it. A few hundred yards later, I saw a pair of shoes. Now I was really freaked out. What was going on? As I drove, I prayed to God, like my father always taught me, for a safe place to pull over. I spotted a strange pile of clothes, some of which looked like children's clothing. This time, I stopped the truck. Panic started to set in. Something was deeply wrong. I sat in the driver's seat, the truck motionless, expecting something to happen. But nothing did. Following my instincts, I stepped out of the truck to investigate the clothing. The cold morning air pierced my skin, jolting me awake. I approached the pile cautiously. It was indeed children's clothing, both boys and girls. I scanned the woods, but the darkness obscured my view. I was on edge, fearing a trap. I decided it wasn't my business to solve this mystery and headed back to the truck. Then, a crunch sounded from my left. I whirled around, alert. After a tense moment, another crunch echoed, this time from the opposite side of the road. My survival instincts kicked in, and I sprinted to the truck, leaping into the driver's seat. Just as I was about to slam the door, a child's scream pierced the night. My heart pounded. I was torn. I wasn't prepared to fight strangers in the dark woods, but I couldn't abandon helpless children. Before I could decide, another scream, identical to the first, rang out. Without a second thought, I fired up the truck and pointed it towards the spot in the woods where I'd heard the noise. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene about 30 yards in. There, hidden behind a couple of trees, were 3 or 4 figures. One of them was holding a massive speaker. As the light hit them, they ducked for cover, but not before I caught a glimpse of what they were doing holding up the speaker, trying to lure me into the woods with a fake child scream. I was stunned. I just sat there, staring at the trees where they'd disappeared. I reached for my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, I heard a thump from the truck bed. Someone had thrown something from the other side of the road. That was it. I turned the truck around and floored it. As I sped away, I saw a figure on the other side of the road. They yelled something I couldn't understand and threw something at the truck, cracking the passenger side window. The rest of the drive was a blur. I was too scared to process what had just happened. There was no way I was stopping in those woods. I finished my delivery and collapsed into bed, sleeping for 10 straight hours. When I woke up, I immediately called the police. They assured me they'd investigate the woods and keep me updated. As I thought about the incident, I realized how foolish I'd been to get out of my truck. I should have just minded my own business. But the thought of a child being kidnapped or worse was too much for me to ignore. To this day, I still don't understand what those people were trying to do. Why didn't they attack me when they had the chance? What were they planning to do if I chased after the sound? In all my years as a trucker, nothing has ever been as strange or terrifying as that night. You've probably seen those trucker vlogs online, right? The ones where they document their days and share tips. I'm pretty young in this industry, and that's all I see on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. People often tell me I could have done more, that I should have finished my degree at that prestigious university. But honestly, trucking's been good to me. The long hours and isolation are the real challenges. You can't truly understand the impact until you experience it firsthand. My advice? Confront your inner demons before they consume you during those long, lonely nights. That's exactly what happened to me. 3 months into my first trucking job, I was driving from New Jersey to Indiana, a 12-hour trip. I'd just finished an 8-hour shift, but I was eager to finish the delivery early, so I decided to drive through the night. The road was empty, and I was pushing the speed limit a bit. I reached for a Red Bull in the center console, but it was empty. Of course, I'd forgotten to restock after my last delivery. Frustrated, I slapped the dashboard and groaned. I hated making unnecessary stops, especially while driving. It seemed like the longer I was on the road, the more tired I got, even if I only stopped for a moment. Looking at the navigation, I knew I had a choice: risk falling asleep at the wheel or stop for an energy drink. Neither option was ideal. Reluctantly, I pulled into the first service stop I saw, somewhere in Ohio. As I approached, I realized it wasn't a typical service station. It looked more like an abandoned gas station converted into a convenience store. Not ideal, but there was another quick stop nearby, so I decided to check this place out first. I parked the semi and walked over to the store. I expected to find either an open door or a locked one. To my surprise, the door swung open, revealing a pitch-black interior. I peered inside, hoping to find a leftover drink or snack. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed a faint glow coming from a back room. Curiosity piqued, I cautiously opened the door. Inside, I found a plugged in refrigerator. Eagerly, I opened it, only to find it completely empty. The shelves were stripped bare, the entire appliance section gutted. As I closed the door, I was almost certain I heard a clatter, like something hitting the floor. I froze for 10 seconds, questioning if I'd imagined it. Cautiously, I crept back into the main room, scanning for any sign of disturbance. Nothing. A part of me wanted to leave it alone, but I couldn't ignore the unease. I rushed out the entrance door and practically jogged to the next door. Relieved to find it open, I quickly bought a drink and returned to my truck. Something about that stop felt off. I needed to get back on the road as soon as possible. As I glanced back at the abandoned store, I noticed the door was open. I was certain I'd closed it. While it wasn't my problem to solve, I couldn't shake the strange feeling. I started the engine and merged onto the highway. The caffeine began to kick in, jolting me out of my tired haze. My mind drifted back to the bizarre incident. A squatter or an abandoned building wasn't entirely unusual, but the missing refrigerator was inexplicable. I tried to dismiss it and focus on the road. Then I noticed peculiar movements in the rearview mirror. The curtain behind me seemed to billow and sway even though the air conditioning was off. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I watched, a chill creeping down my spine. I thought the worst someone was in my truck. Unarmed and terrified, I discreetly dialed the nearest police station. The drive was the most harrowing 20 minutes of my life as I imagined them lunging or trying to crash the vehicle. Finally, I pulled up to the station and ran inside. Within seconds, my truck was surrounded by police. When they opened the back, I saw three disheveled, homeless individuals, two men and a woman. One man was armed with two switchblades. They refused to speak, their menacing stares haunting me. I still don't know what their intentions were, and I doubt I ever will.